going on there, everybody? Hopefully everyone's having a great day today. In today's video, we're going to be going over the best settings you can possibly have, in my opinion, whether you're on PC or console for Black Ops Cold War. So I highly recommend you guys sticking to the end of the video so you guys don't miss anything. If you guys are new here, please hit that subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so you guys don't miss any of my uploads. And definitely leave a like on the video if you guys find this video helpful in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to be trying to be posting about 3 to 4 videos of Cold War content a week, so definitely stay tuned for that. And with that being said, let's just jump right into today's video. To begin with, I'm going to be going over the graphics settings that I'm currently using. So a lot of these are kind of pretty standard. For display mode, typically you should be running on full screen. I'm running on just a single monitor. Refresh rate, this all depends on the monitor that you're using. So in this case, I am using a 144 Hz monitor, so I have it set to 144 Hz. My gameplay VSync and my menu VSync, this obviously applies to PC players. I tried enabling these and I get a huge spike in screen tearing as well as a big drop in frame rates. So I just recommend you guys just disabling these two. For the render resolution and display resolution, this obviously depends on your monitor. So in this case, the monitor that I'm using is a 1080p pixel monitor. So I have these set at 1080p. Aspect ratio, I wouldn't really bother messing with this too much. I just leave it at just automatic. Field of view, I definitely recommend you guys just kind of just sticking with what you guys are most comfortable with, especially in the previous Call of Duties. Typically, I play anywhere between 100 and 110, so I feel like in this game particularly, 105 works the best for me. On to ADS field of view, I leave this on independent, so as you can see, independent states that aiming down sights will zoom the field of view to its intended value. I feel like that's super important because you want to be able to get that additional zoom in when you're actually aiming down on your weapon to actually see the enemy player. So I highly recommend you guys running this on independent. Brightness, I have my brightness set at 65. Again, this is also a personal preference. I think the standard, the default settings for this is 50, but I just do it a little bit brighter. It just helps me out. It's what I'm used to. Frame rate limits, again, this is how it was above over here where I have mine set at 144 Hz. So if I came down here for custom, I just set everything to 144 Hz. My menu and minimize gameplay, I just leave it at the standard 60 frames. For the texture qualities, I typically leave these on a lower setting just so that I can, keep up with my higher frame rates. This will obviously dictate what type of PC you have and like what your PC can handle. So, and for my case, I typically just leave these on low for the texture quality and model quality. Sound effects, I leave this on high. I haven't really noticed too much of a difference if I leave it on medium or high. So I recommend you guys just leaving it on high. Screen space reflection, this is kind of a personal preference. I just leave this on low. I don't really see too much of a difference when you leave it on high or low. So object view distance, this one I don't really see too much of a difference in the actual gameplay. So I just honestly just leave this on medium. But in your personal preference, you can just leave this as a high. But for me, in my case, I just leave it on medium. For the shadowing and lighting, a lot of these I kind of just leave on low or disabled. I don't see too much of a difference in the actual gameplay, but obviously if you have a better PC and your PC can handle it, obviously I recommend you guys running this on like a medium or high. But in my case, to save my frame rates, I leave this on a lower setting. Kind of moving on to like the ray tracing, I leave all these disabled. Same thing, it depends on your PC. In my case, what works best for me is I just leave everything disabled. But if you guys have a better PC, maybe leave it on like medium or even higher. But in my case, I just leave it disabled. Moving on to the post-processing effects, I believe this is like a new feature. I've not seen this in any of the other Call of Duties, but right now I just leave it disabled for my NVIDIA DLSS. And since I have a lot of my settings on low, I keep my anti-aliasing quality higher. So I put this on ultra. And then kind of like the rest of these, so ambient occlusion equality, I leave this on medium. Depends on your PC as well. Again, you can leave it on low or disabled, but like I said, depends on your PC. On to motion blur, I highly recommend you guys disabling this. You guys never want to enable this or do self only. Highly recommend you guys disabling this, especially when you guys are playing on higher sensitivity and when you guys are moving corners quick. You guys want to be able to like see players, and as you guys can see on the right side, you can see how bad the blur can be. So every single player should be honestly disabling this, so highly recommend you guys doing that. For motion blur quality, definitely leave this on low, simple as that. Surface scattering, I leave this on disabled. I honestly don't see any difference when you have this enabled or disabled, so in my case I just leave it disabled just to help my frame rates. The order, independence, transparency. This is kind of a personal preference. Basically, it says that higher quality will increase the amount of transparent effects and objects that are sorted when you're looking through them. In my case, honestly, I just leave this on low. I don't see too much of a difference between low and medium. High, I mean, yeah, you can see a little bit, but then again, all depends on your PC and your monitors. Moving down over here for the advanced settings, I honestly have not touched this. This is kind of my default settings that I like when I started the game, so I wouldn't really mess too much with these. Onto the audio settings. So for my master volume, so that's just like your overall game volume, I leave this at just 100. Onto the audio settings. So for my master volume, so that's just like your overall game volume, I leave this at just 100. Music volume, and personally, in my opinion, is really annoying, to be honest. I just leave this at 20 just for like a slight background noise. For sound effects volume, highly recommend you guys running this at 100%. Biggest key thing for this is being able to hear enemies' footsteps. That's like the #1 thing, but as well as just like hearing the enemies like gun reloading or just switching weapons or whatnot. So having this at 100% definitely helps you out, especially if you guys are a search and destroy player. Dialogue instead of max volume. This is honestly personal preference. In my case, I just leave this at like a good 80. I feel like that's like works the best for me. Video presets. The best one that I honestly found was high boost. You can really hear the footsteps. I've tried the super bass boost, and I feel like that's a little too much. I feel like I can hear too many things and whatnot. So highly recommend you guys using high boost. Definitely try it out and let me know. Okay, sound effect. This is like a personal preference. If you like hearing it, just enable it. If not, disable it. In my personal preference, I like to have this enabled. Kind of moving down to over here, voice chat, I have it enabled. Game chat, I leave my voice chat volume to 1.5. I feel like that works the best for me. Speakers, headphones, voice chat, and microphone. This obviously depends on what kind of setup you're using. I leave all this on default communication device. I leave my microphone on open mic, but sometimes if I get annoyed from the party chat, I just toggle this to push to talk. But I mean, this also depends on whether you have keyboard or not. So open microphone sensitivity, I believe the default was 50, so I don't think I played with it. I think I just left this at 50. Microphone volume, I believe originally was at 0.5. I bumped this up to 0.6, but also these two depends on what kind of setup that you're using. Get on to the advanced settings. Mute game when minimized. I just leave this disabled. Basically what this is it mutes the game when Black Ops Cold War is not in the current focus application. Then again, so this does not affect the voice chat as well, but I just leave it disabled. Continuation, this basically just like lowers the game volume whenever it's like yourself or someone in the party chat is talking. I leave this disabled just because I use the Elgato capture card, and within those settings I actually have this enabled, so I don't need to do it twice, so I have this disabled. Alright, moving on to the interface. A lot of these are kind of pretty standard. I didn't really change too much of any of these settings. So to begin with, subtitles, I'll leave this disabled, personal preference. Introduction movie, I just always leave this skip. Honestly, I don't want to keep seeing the introduction movie every time Cold War starts up, so depends on your personal preference. The HUD bounds, this kind of depends on your actual playstyle and whatnot, so you guys can adjust this if you guys want that corner mini map closer to you so your eyes are not moving so much to the corner of the screen. This is kind of like where I have it set as. I'm still kind of playing around with it, but this is kind of almost the default settings of how it originally was set up. For the HUD elements, I think I left a lot of these standard. I don't think I've changed a lot of these, but all of these are kind of based on your personal preference. In my case, I like to see everything. So for crosshairs, hit marks visuals, damage based hit markers, ally health bars, enemy health bars, I like all these to be shown. I like to be able to see everything and like what's going on throughout the gameplay. Player's name, this is kind of a personal preference. I used to do icon only, but I kind of feel like a full name is just helps better for me to see and like ping players from a far distance. Horizontal compass, personal preference. I feel like a lot of you guys just leave this shown, so that's what I do. Moving on, floating damage numbers, personal preference again. This is more effective on just zombies itself. I leave this enabled. Zombie names and health bars, this kind of depends on a personal preference as well. I like to see everything. It just makes life so much easier. In this case, for the telemetry FPS counter, I like to have it in my corner just so I know that if I'm getting a huge like drop in frame rates and whatnot. Everything else over here is basically hidden for the most part. But these are all particularly for PC settings specifically. So if you guys are on console, these settings will not be applied to you. For the final settings, I'm going to be going over the controller. Yes, I do play on PC, but I do use an Xbox SCUF controller, so I'm going to be going over through my settings for those. So for my input device, obviously it sets a controller. Horizontal stick sensitivity and vertical stick sensitivity. This kind of dictates like how you play and like what you're actually used to. So for most Call of Duties, I typically play anywhere between 7 and 9. So I feel the most comfortable with in this game is at 8. But then again, this is also depending on like your personal preference. For the ADS stick sensitivity for the low and high zoom, I actually use the exact same settings I use in Modern Warfare. This is all based on personal preference of like how your playstyle is and what you actually feel the most comfortable with. So in my case, I run these at 0.9, but then again, like it all depends on personal preference. I can't tell you guys what settings for these two specifically that are actually the best to actually use. It all depends on your actual overall playstyle. For my button layout, I run just default settings, flip default. Since I do use this SCUF controller, I have the paddles in the back, so I use A, B, X, and Y on all my back triggers. So that's why I just kind of just leave these at default settings, but I suggest you guys running anything that you guys feel the most comfortable with. My invert look, obviously I have this disabled. If you guys do like playing inverted, I mean enable it, but I've never met anyone came across who plays in a inverted vertical look. So I'll leave this disabled. Control vibration, this is all on personal preference. I think it's better to leave it disabled just so that you guys don't, I don't know, I just find it difficult for me to like start aiming when someone's shooting at me and my controller is vibrating, so I leave this on disabled. For the gameplay, the aim down sight aim assist, this is a little bit different than Modern Warfare. In Modern Warfare, you actually were able to choose whether you wanted, I believe like the options were like dynamic or linear, or it's just standard. In this case, you just have it disabled or enabled. I recommend you guys just enabling it. I don't really see too much of a difference when it's disabled and enabled, but in my opinion, I think aim down sight assist, having this enabled helps out. Slow down strafing and aim assist, just leave this on enabled. I don't see too much of a difference in my gameplay when I have this disabled as well, but then again, it's based on personal preference. Airborne mantle behavior, I've been kind of playing around with both for the airborne mantle behavior, honestly, I've been playing around with both manual and automatic. Right now, I have been playing with automatic, so I'm trying to see how that goes. But I might try again manual, kind of see how it is. But then again, it's also based on personal preference of what you're used to and what your playstyle is. So in my case right now, I'm playing automatic, but I mean, this could change in the future. Aim down sight behavior and steady aim behavior, I have both of these on hold. These are pretty standard for me, what I'm used to. That again, it's based on personal preference. This is what works best for me. I've known a lot of players that actually do play both of these on toggle, but in my case, I use these on just holding them. Moving on to armor behavior, this applies specifically to Warzone. I'm personally not a Warzone player. I've never really gotten into it too much, so I just leave this on apply 1. But if you are a heavy Warzone player, I highly recommend you guys using apply all, just so that you guys can consecutively press Y to use all the armor plates as possible. For the attack vehicle control mode, I honestly have no idea which one I honestly like better. Definitely leave a comment down below what you guys think is actually easier and more effective to use in gameplay. Right now, I kind of just use this on aim base right now, but I have tried alternate and I still can't figure out which one I like better. So definitely leave a comment down below and let me know what you guys think. Moving on to the advanced settings, for my stick layout, again, I leave it on default. It's also based on personal preference, the way you're used to. I think majority of you guys play just on default, but obviously a few of you guys are probably used to either any of these other configurations. Moving on to the left stick and the right stick minimal input threshold. I find that leaving these on like a low, anywhere between like 5 and like 8 typically works the best for me to prevent any stick drifting. So highly recommend you guys leaving it anywhere between 5 and 8. Left stick and right stick max input threshold. This is purely on personal preference as well. I'm just used to just having these on max, so I have to push my joysticks all the way to the left, for instance, to actually move to the left. But then again, based on personal preference or what you guys are actually used to. Moving on to the last bit of these settings. A lot of these are kind of also, these are all basically personal preference, I think, personally. So whatever you're the most comfortable using, I highly recommend you guys just sticking with that. But in my case, for my auto sprint, I leave this on disabled. Sprint behavior, I leave this on toggle. So basically, when I leave this on toggle, it's basically I have to press to sprint, and if I keep pressing again, it won't do anything. Sprint cancel reload, I highly recommend you guys leaving this on enabled. There's been so many times when I'm facing against an enemy and I'm reloading and another enemy comes around and I want to stop reloading. So the best way to doing that is by just doing a quick sprint to stop so you can start shooting. Highly recommend you guys enabling this. It's been so frustrating for me leaving this on disabled, so definitely recommend you guys enabling this. Parachute auto deploy, I leave this on standard. Equipment behavior, I typically just leave this on hold. I feel like this is what most people are most comfortable using, but then again, based on personal preference or what you're used to, in my case, I like holding it, so that's why I have it set as. Lastly, for the interact reload behavior, I feel like most people do tap to reload. That's what I'm most comfortable using, but I do have seen people use prioritize interact. Again, based on personal preference, but my suggestion would be just leave this on tap to reload. That's gonna wrap it up for today's video. Hopefully you guys found this video informative and helpful. Definitely leave a comment down below and let me know if you guys are actually use any of the settings that I use. That being said, hopefully you guys have a fantastic day and I'll see you guys in the next video. Rage on that beat, going crazy.